an Adventist Jewish congregation in Paris, an urban center of influence in Vienna, Austria, and a delicious recipe from the Mission 360 kitchen coming up next. Hello and welcome to Mission 360, coming to you today from Paris, France. This majestic city is often referred to as the City of Light, and there's probably at least two sources for that title. First of all, Paris was at the forefront of the Enlightenment, with philosophers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau bringing so-called enlightenment to Europe and to the rest of the world. A second source is light. Light itself. Street lamps lit up this entire city in the late 1800s as gas lamps were used for the first time, lighting up the streets and buildings, and even today buildings such as the Eiffel Tower at night come alive with light. As we think about light, as we look at light, I'm reminded of Jesus being the light of the world, and he invited his disciples to also be the light to the world. And on today's program, we'll be looking at men and women who are sharing the light of God's love around the world. First up, let's stay here in Europe and travel to Vienna, Austria, and visit Ferdinand, whose life was changed through an urban center of influence.
Ferdinand spent 7 years sleeping under a tree near the Danube River in Vienna, Austria. He was homeless and hurting, but Ferdinand saw an opportunity to change his life, and he took it. In the center of the city, this ADRA-operated center of influence meets the needs of the homeless and refugee population.
Yes, this is a center of influence where we take the people from where they are, with their needs, from the street, refugees, and we do integration work for the refugees. We give German courses, the language courses in general, and we help them with government issues, with papers and forms to get registered here. They get also food, they get clothes, and also be included in a social environment where they start to regain their self-esteem and become a part of our society.
Yeah, here you are in the room of our clothing distribution. We have this room open for 2 days per week, 1 day for women and children, 1 day for men. And they can come here, they can apply and get any clothing they need for their everyday life.
In addition to the clothing distribution, a major event of the week is the food distribution. People come to have a meal together, take food for their families, and have a place to feel safe. Ferdinand had little hope of improving his life. Each day he visited various social projects around Vienna that gave food to the homeless. Every day was the same, until one day he went to the center of influence run by ADRA. He thought that something was different about this place. In a city where everyone seemed too busy to notice him, Ferdinand felt genuinely welcomed in this center. Over time, he kept coming back, and the center felt more like home than anywhere else. He began volunteering at the center and had some ideas on how to improve their services. He was given responsibility and started a paid job. His life was totally transformed, and he developed a relationship with Jesus. Now, Ferdinand serves as a full-time project manager for the center, touching lives every single day. He understands the needs of the people and is a symbol of hope to others. The staff here shares a spiritual message to those who are open to learning more about Jesus. They offer a Bible study on Saturday afternoons to anyone who is interested. Their group is growing each week.
Well, compared to the traditional understanding of evangelism, where you confront people with the Bible straight away. Here, you have to win their relationship, their friendship, their trust first. That means you can't hit them with the Bible over their head, but you have to show and prove to them that they as people are important. And that takes a lot of patience. On the other hand, you need a vision. You need to know where you want to lead them and ask the Lord to show us the way how to do it.
Please pray for this center of influence in Vienna. Pray that they are able to meet the needs of the people in practical and spiritual ways. And pray that their actions continue to paint a picture of Jesus. Thank you for supporting Mission.
My guest is Shalom David, who is the first Israeli Seventh-day Adventist pastor. Shalom, welcome. Now, that's a terrific Jewish-sounding name.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is actually a common name in Israel, Shalom.
Okay.
And the surname also David. So usually people mixed up with the surname and the first name.
Yeah, but it's very biblical.
I don't mind to be David or Shalom.
Right. Now, you were a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, but before that, were you a believer? Were you Jewish? Were you an atheist?
I was growing up in a traditional Jewish family. We were not very religious. Rarely we went to a synagogue, but we kept the feasts and all the rituals like circumcision and bar mitzvah, but we were not religious. I was actually myself, I was a secular Jew.
Okay, so looking back when you were a secular Jew, how did you view Christians? What was your view of Christians and churches?
You know, in Israel we really not tend to think too much about Christianity.
Right.
But when we are confronted with a question about Christianity, usually it's not a very positive response because of the circumstances of history. You know, that being a Christian in Israel is not a very, to say the least, it's not a compliment to say that you're a Christian. The education system in Israel is not promoting Christianity at all. At all, and that's, I would say, to say the least. Yeah. Jesus is not being presented as many of us today sees him, as a shepherd with a lamb in his hand, loving shepherd, but more than a crusade, with a sword in his hand and a very bad attitude towards Jews. Jesus has a identity in Israel of not a savior, but the other way around.
Ah, okay.
So, naturally the Jews are very sensitive for their own identity, and being related somehow to Jesus is something that Jews doesn't want to have in their life, to accept him as anything to do with Judaism.
So how did your view of Jesus change?
Well, in the beginning, I can remember my conversations with my wife. She became an Adventist before, 8 years actually. We experienced a great controversy 8 years at my home. And I remember also when you came to visit us in the beginning when I became a believer. But before that, 8 years before, for me, believing in such theology was not less than pathetic. Because for us Jews, God can never die. He can win, he can take revenge, he has a lot of power, but die. God never die. And the theology that is speaking about God that will die for you on a cross in such a shaming situation, it's unbearable for us as Jews to accept, because God is glorious. He will never be on a cross naked and be put to shame. This is for the enemies of God,
right,
not for God himself. So I used to tell her, look, you cannot present God in such a way. This is a pathetic, choose yourself another religion and to present to me. Maybe I will accept it, but not this one, because this is not for the glory of God.
Right.
If I would have believed in God, I would not accept this kind of God as my God. You can accept him as your God, but not my God. But you used to cry a lot because of that.
So what changed you?
What changed me actually was not what, but who. It is the identity of God and of the realization that actually we're talking about an entity, not only about religion and tradition, but a person that really seek you and try to speak to you through a plan. You know, I was a very practical person in a way of if something look logic for me and something that is appealing to my mind, I would accept it. But the way it was presented to me on the cross was not appealing at all. What did appeal to me was an appeal came from a pastor named Paul Lippi. He was my first, after many years that I rejected any kind of suggestion that I would become a student of Christianity. But once I agreed and he spoke about the plan of God. And he spoke about our problem. And he spoke about the way to solve the problem that God. And he took me step by step through the how you call this, sacrificial system. For me, it was such a primitive thing. In the beginning, I didn't want to think about it. But when I opened the Bible and he showed me the purpose of the blood, and he showed me the Passover in a very new light. You know, what he did actually was using Jewish motives and Jewish understanding in order for me to understand it better. And you know something very interesting? Once you're coming from this approach, it's the best approach to come to a Jew, because then you can understand why tradition is the way it is.
Right.
And today I can celebrate the Passover in Israel in such a way that I can really connect to the feast and to understand it even better.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank God.
So, Pastor, in 30 seconds, how has your life changed now that you are following Jesus?
My life was changed thoroughly. I'm so blessed. I pray all my life, now in my life, I pray that the blessings that God is showing in my life will only show His glory. That's really what I pray for. If you would like me to tell you in very short terms, I know I cannot convert anybody. It's not in my power. Only the power is in God's Holy Spirit. But I really hope His character is shown in my life and in my family, because my family is a powerful tool. I love each one of you. You know that. I love my family. I love my wife. And I know God is presented in our life in such a way that it is not only our blessing, but also the blessing for others.
Thank you very much, Shalom.
Amen.
And after that wonderful story, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Paris, France, and you don't have to walk too far in this romantic city to see that people take food seriously. They sit down for their meal. Fast food is only a recent innovation, and I'm glad that God gave us the gift of food. So next up, let's travel to the Mission 360 kitchen and taste some international recipes.
Welcome to our Mission 360 kitchen. Today we're going to try something different and that we hope you enjoy. We think of our world as a global neighborhood, and so that's one of the reasons why we like to try recipes from various places. So today we're going to make something called Scottish broth. Now you would think that a broth would be something very thin, kind of like a stock or something like that, but not in the case of Scotland. Scotland does things in a very hearty way. And this particular soup is very dense, it's very thick, has a lot of vegetables, and it's served quite often from ingredients that they might have had in the old days. They might have had all these ingredients in their cellar. But it's substantial, and they sometimes refer to it as an evening porridge. So we're going to try that.
Sounds delicious.
What are the ingredients that we have?
We need a half a cup of pearl barley, and then 2 medium onions, which are sauteed with margarine.
Okay.
8 cups of water, 5 medium carrots, 4 stalks of celery, 2 medium turnips,
Okay.
a 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary, and then just a teaspoon of salt.
Okay, that sounds easy enough. Okay, well, we've already heated up our water. And so we're going to add in the pearl barley that we've already soaked. Now, barley, as you may know, takes quite a while to cook. So we've put our barley in a bowl and we covered it with boiling water, and then we just covered that with a saucer and just let that soak for a while. You want to do that for at least 30 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and put that into the pot. And the barley is going to make that soup nice and thick. May have to add water later.
I'll add good texture too.
Yes, it certainly will.
Good.
Okay, there's the barley.
Now let me put in the onions, which we've already sauteed.
Okay, now we're going to put in the carrots. That's going to add some color, and that's one of those good vegetables that will last a long time in your cellar if you have one.
It's already looking cheerful.
Yes, it is.
I'm gonna add some green now with the celery.
Ah, that looks good. And now we've got turnip. If you don't care for turnip and you like rutabaga better, you can try that.
I wonder if you could even do like potatoes or something.
You actually could. So that's another thing that lasts a long and that people would keep in their pantry a long time, or it would always be a staple, something that they would have. Stir that up just a little.
Oh, it's so colorful.
It is. And that's going to thicken right up.
Okay, let me put in the rosemary.
Okay.
Stir that in. Okay.
And we have a bit of salt here. You can leave it out if you don't like the salt, but usually it adds to the general flavor of it, so I'm putting it in today. So we're going to stir this one more time. We're going to bring it back to a boil, and then we're just going to turn the heat down and let it simmer for about 45 minutes. And your house is going to smell so good, I promise you. So we'll come back when the soup is done and see how it turned out.
Wow, that smells really good.
It does smell good.
It looks done.
Let's see if it's thick. I think it is. It looks like that barley's really expanded.
Yeah,
So.
it's really puffed up.
Ah, okay.
Shall we try it?
Yeah, let's do.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me get you a bowl.
All right.
This looks really good. Like on a sick day, or if you're just feeling like you
Yeah,
want to be
or
cozy.
if you want to just cook and have the same thing for the next 2 or 3 days, this is good.
That too.
Yes, I find that this is one of those soups that seems to absorb the flavors and taste even better on the second day. So don't be afraid if you have any left over. It's good.
All the flavors are coming in. It's really nice.
I like it. Would you make this again?
I would.
I would too. I've made it many, many times. I don't think I'll be stopping. Well, thank you for joining us on our Mission 360 kitchen, and we hope to catch you again sometime soon.
Next up, Pastor Richard Elifair talks about the special role of Jewish people in God's kingdom.
We are here in the city of Villeret. This name means the city of Jews, Jewish city in French. And in fact, we are very close to Paris, in the suburb of Paris. Why we came here? Because this street and this city, and especially this building behind us, has a very strong and meaningful meaning for me, because it was where I was a child. My childhood was here in this street. And in fact, this synagogue was established by my father when I was a child.
Richard was born in Casablanca, Morocco, but it was a difficult country for a Jewish family to live at the time. They relocated to France when Richard was a young boy. His family bought a house in a suburb of Paris, but soon realized there was no Jewish synagogue nearby.
Because we had no synagogue in this city, my father, who was an Orthodox Jew, decided to plant a synagogue. And then he did it first as a home church, a home synagogue, we could say. This synagogue became the official synagogue of this city of Villeret. And it was here where I have done my bar mitzvah when I was 12, exactly like Jesus in Jerusalem when he was 12. Okay, we are here in front of the school, my school when I was a child. And why this school has some importance for me? Because in fact it was my primary school, and it was in this school I met a friend who introduced me to his father. But his father was a Seventh-day Adventist. Not many Seventh-day Adventists in Villeret at that time.
It was here that Richard was introduced to the Bible. He would go to his friend's house any chance he could to study the Bible over the next few years. With time, he started to feel a change in his outlook on life.
And then progressively, but it took me about 5 years, I discovered that Jesus was the Messiah of the Bible. And then I gave my life to Jesus. But it was very, very difficult for my family. I remember about 2 months before my baptism, my father called rabbis, many rabbis, to try to convince me not to convert to Adventism. But no argument can compete with what I understood from the Bible. And after this month, when my father discovered that I was decided to be baptized, he said, "You are not anymore my son." And he threw me out from the house. And then I have not seen my father for about 10 years.
There are millions of Jews around the world who have yet to be ministered to by Christians. Since the day he gave his life to Jesus, Richard has been passionate about sharing the gospel with the Jewish people. He became a pastor and lived in Israel for 15 years to study and pastor there. He eventually moved back to Paris to continue his work in reaching the Jewish people. Today, Richard leads a small Adventist Jewish congregation in Paris. This group meets regularly in a small space of what was once an old movie theater. The meetings are meant to bridge the gap between the Jewish faith and the Adventist faith, but they need your prayers.
You know, I have said I was born in a Jewish Orthodox family. And I know that the Jewish people is a people of God from the Bible. But something is missing among the Jews. And what is missing is a knowledge of Jesus. I have discovered Jesus 40 years ago. And since that time, I am in the church. And I try to share Jesus with the Jewish people because I know they need Jesus. I know the second coming of Jesus is very soon. But for that, he needs also the Jews to discover Jesus. And because I have experimented that in my life, I have experimented that the Jews need Jesus, we need to share Jesus with them. And because we want Jesus to come back soon, then we have to do the Jewish ministry. We have to preach the gospel to the Jews.
Please pray for this Adventist synagogue as they continue to grow. Thank you for your support of ministries like this.
Well, that's about it for Mission 360 today. I hope that you've been inspired and challenged by what you've seen and heard. And I want to thank you for your continuing support of Mission through your personal involvement, through your generous financial gifts, and most importantly, through your continuing prayer for Mission. I was taken today by the story of the Urban Center of Influence in Vienna. What a wonderful ministry. And I'd like to offer you this free book. It's called It's Time, Stories from the Front Lines of Urban Mission. This is packed full of wonderful stories like the story from Vienna, and I know that you will be inspired as you read this book. Well, for Adventist Mission, I'm Gary Krause, and I hope you can join me next time right here on Mission 360.